Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. Had a little technical difficulty with the earlier stream. Trying it again, see if there's a reverb or anything. I don't hear it now. But on today's show, I have two very special guests, returning guests. It's Philip and Paul Collins. If you've listened to my show, you've heard them many times. I've reposted some of the old shows that they've done with Visigoth or the Grassy Knoll. It's kind of confusing because Viz shut down some of his things and started new ones. So he did Grassy Knoll, Beyond Grassy Knoll, the Alembic Files, and then he retitled series and did different series. Some were very long. The one he did on Hitler with Larry the Contractor guy, that was like 40 episodes. But he put out so much content, so much great content. And I was going through some content that I found about them. It was this Magicians of Mutability, which I found on Archive. And literally was listening through it today and gasped at a few things, like how prescient it was, how much foresight that you guys had, Viz and Paul and Philip, on these subject matters. Like literally they were talking about Brzezinski and Iran, Russia, and China coming together, among many other things, like the Georgia Guidestones, so many other things we talked about today, Denver airport. But there's a lot in this. So I've titled this one, The Magicians of Mutability, the Semiotic Deception of September 11th. And you'll see that the title from an old article they did, basically, I think it was 20 years ago. And this is not their only, writings. We've done shows on, I think they have two known books right now. There was one book they talked about terrorism that I hadn't heard about. I don't think it's on Amazon. But one is Evoking the Beyond, the Kantian Rift, Mythologized Menaces, and the Quest for the New Man. So you can see some of those articles, which I've reposted. There's two of those, and then their original book is The Ascendancy of the Scientific Dictatorship. And I've interviewed them about that, I think, and also Viz did, so I reposted that. But I've reposted other ones recently. Two are about the deep politics of God, a lot of the shady stuff that was going on during the Bush administration. We also talked about In Bed with the Enemy, so check those out too. You can check those. And the other is MJ12 and the Report from Iron Mountain. And you see that theme of that they've focused on. A lot of this ufology is very suspect, to say the least. But some of the earlier interviews we've done as well are Anglotopian Dreams, Science Fiction in the Anglophile Milieu, 1871 to 1904. We've also done Deception Through Disclosure, The Coming Cosmic Operation Northwoods. That was, I think, our most recent one. Now it was November 14th, 2025. We also did Deception Through Disclosure Continued, Deception Through Disclosure Decoding the Grush Enigma. So much, just keep bombarding us with all this UFO stuff. Automated Autotheism, Transhumanism, and the Technological Transposition of Divinity. A lot of really important stuff, but I think these are these ones that I'm going to repost, the Magicians of Mutability in its entirety. I have to go through a lot of these old Visigoth ones because he liked to play music. He loved music. He would actually, for people who don't know, he would do full shows like during the holidays on his musical taste, like for an hour, hour and a half, and just roll them through and insert music in there with not much care for copyright. So for me to like republish this stuff on YouTube without getting, censured or censored, I have to go back and re-edit, but it also gives me time to equalize it, try to make it sound better. Some of the sound stuff definitely better these days, and it's automatically upgraded through Spreaker and things like that. But housekeeping and background stuff aside, I think this is a very important timestamp of these discussions we're going to talk about. We can cover a lot of other topics too, but it's these Magicians of Mutability, 2005, right after 9/11, and I've titled this again, The Semiotic Deception, September 11th. So Philip and Paul Collins, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, William. Nice to talk to you again.
Yeah. Likewise. It's always great to have you back. For people who haven't heard your background, we were talking about some of your history. Like, you guys have been around for decades, talking to other important hosts. Like, I used to listen to Michael Corbin too. I think he's out of Colorado, but unfortunately, yes. I think he had an early passing.
Yes,
passed away young.
He had a stroke.
Massive stroke. Yeah.
It was really sad. He was nationally syndicated radio talk show host out of Denver. He initially began with the Paranet Continuum, which largely concerned itself with topics surrounding ufology, but as Michael Corbin became more and more familiar with the more dubious characters that populate the ufological milieu, he began to dislodge himself from that particular milieu, and that's when he started a closer look. And a closer look dealt with a wee bit broader spectrum of topics, largely concerning itself with parapolitics, deep politics, elite deviancy, the topic of the quest to form a world government, the New World Order, as it's been euphemistically dubbed by many proponents of the globalist worldview. But Michael Corbin really opened up a lot of investigational threads for us to follow. He brought to our attentions the Best Friends Animal Shelter, its connections to the Process Church. He brought to our attention William Sims Bainbridge, who of course is one of, I don't know if the man is still alive, but he was one of the chief apologists for the Process Church, and also very sympathetic to transhumanism. He really helped to edify our investigational efforts.
He was the one that actually commissioned us to do the series that we did over the Minutemen, and how there was this kind of radicalization going on within the Minutemen's ranks by groups that most people hadn't even heard of at the time, and individuals that many people didn't think about at the time. The Diener Group, Richard Mellonscape of the Mellon Dynasty, John Tanton, and he set us off on that one, and we ended up doing probably about 5 or 6 installments in that series as a result, and got on the radio and talked with him a lot about it. Ended up coming alongside of him as collaborators and as far as regular contributors to his ACL report, or ACL journal,
which you can see if you guys are watching this on YouTube, X, or Rumble. You will see the ACL report. There are old ones on archive, so you'll see what Marco Corbin looked like right here. Closer look. That was him, and this is your article, The Deep Politics of God, which I just reposted. I had no idea this article existed. Deep Politics of God, the CNP Dominionism, and the Ted Haggard. If you don't remember, Ted Haggard I think he was South Colorado, and he was very controversial. And then he was like with some gay prostitute, which kind of ties in with Turning Point America. If you hear some of the backstories there too, wow.
It ties in with the whole Turning Point thing in ways that you couldn't even imagine. It kind of like foreshadowed it, because what happened is that when we were looking at Ted Haggard, we looked into his background, and we found out that he was part of a group called the Council for National Policy, which was supposed to be this kind of right of center response to the Council on Foreign Relations, and a lot of the members there were that's of that whole CMP constellation were also, and still are to this day, big proponents of dominionism. And dominionism is very big within TPUSA, at least TPUSA faith. You have a lot of these NAR movement guys. And the NAR is the New Apostolic Reformation, I believe it is. And if you look
NAR,
at what
they call it NAR, yeah. That's in the Turning Point America too, yeah. TMP.
Yeah, it's part of Turning Point USA. I think it's the part of TPUSA that's part of it's called TPUSA Faith. It's kind of like the religious component of the organization. But you look at the NAR the NAR movement, and it's all the same thing. It's just dominionism under another title. And
Seven
so,
Mountains mandate. You have a mandate to take over these 7 things in our culture, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what
The
they. That's
whole,
what they say.
the whole idea is that that Jesus Christ cannot or will not come back unless you take the government by force or by coercion or by subversion, by subverting it, and then you can expect the eschaton.
Yeah, then you can induce the parousia. So it's basically a form of neo-Gnosticism. It's like many of the other socio-political utopian movements of the late 19th, early 20th century. No different from communism, fascism, the effort to immanentize the eschaton, as Eric Vogelin would have put it, or to put it in layman's terms, to basically draw the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven, here to earth through the efforts of man himself.
But NAR and TPUSA and that whole constellation there is basically the outer shell of, or the groups that are used by a certain faction of the elite here in the United States, known as the Southern Rim. And everybody hears about, the East Coast and the elites coming out of the East Coast, and out of the Northeastern Ivy League schools. Everybody knows about them. Everybody knows about the Eastern liberal establishment, but they don't know about their competitors in the Sunbelt state and in that southern rim portion of the country, that south of the 37th parallel. And they don't know about these groups and these power players, and so they don't have as nuanced an understanding of deep politics as it plays out here in North America. And and that's what that really led us on the trail of.
Right. And those 2 articles are out. The Deep Politics of God are on archive.org. I'll try to put links in the show notes so people can check those out. But I found the second one right here. So still out, like, gosh. And they overlap with like Decamp and all these other characters and the Illuminati. And it's really incredible. Like, you guys have got a great repository people haven't seen yet. These are still relevant. Like, they're trenchant. Like, timestamps too in 2007. It's incredible.
Yeah, well, I know that Brett and Thomas who run the PsyOp Cinema show and have the Decoding Culture Foundation. They've started reprinting some of the articles, so some of them have
included the one that we're covering tonight, Semiotic Deception of 9/11. They just recently put it back up on their site too.
I wasn't aware of that, so the timing's perfect. I didn't know that.
But prior to that, Terry Melanson, who wrote probably the best book over the Bavarian Illuminati that's out there, The Perfectibilist, he was originally publishing us when Michael Corbin wasn't publishing us. He would be publishing us on a regular basis, and then unfortunately Terry came into some hard times. Last we heard, he was homeless and didn't have a place to stay, and so his website where all these articles were at got taken down, and so it's
I think somebody's created a mirror site or they've managed to archive it somehow. But yeah, unfortunately, Terry, we still haven't heard about from him. We don't know what his present status is, but
I reached out to him a couple years ago, and he did not sound like he was in a good place. So I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. But the Magicians of Mutability series, which we did that with Visigoth. Like you said, circa 2005. Wow, man, that's a long time ago. But the thesis of that series was that the various hegemons comprising the global oligarchical establishment espouse some variant of an anthropological doctrine of absolute human plasticity. And this Gnostically inspired doctrine challenges every single determinant of man's identity. There's no, on this doctrine, there's no immutable attributes or invariable properties according to which man is defined. There's no ontological fixity. Man, on the essential level, is mutable. And man is governed by absolute anthropological indeterminacy. So, as such, man is a pliable organism who can be resculpted according to the enlightened schematics of a few conditioners who, by virtue of their alleged gnosis, their secret knowledge, their ostensible enlightened view of human and human origins and human nature, they situate themselves outside of morality. They are basically the proverbial Nietzschean overmen. They are not they're not bound by any moral law. They're not bound by any moral values. They're beyond good and evil, as Nietzsche would have put it. But this elite class of technocrats arrogate to themselves the right to impose a system of behavioral tyranny upon humanity, which humanity, in their view, is rendered inherently mutable by institutionally accredited science, which they fetishize. They elevate it to the status of a veritable metaphysics. Science becomes a form of gnosis, or secret knowledge in and of itself. It basically becomes scientism, which is the epistemological conviction that the investigational methods of science, although they're relatively epistemologically circumscribed by the fact that they can only deal with what is quantifiably and empirically demonstrable, nevertheless, they can be, on this view, imposed upon all fields of study. And through that imposition of science, you have, in the words of B.F. Skinner, the dehomunculization of man. Man is divested of his of dignity, of any sort of ennobling qualities. The literatures of freedom and dignity are completely abolished. But this enlightened class of technocrats, which we dub the magicians of mutability, through the alchemy of state education, psychological manipulation, mass propaganda, eugenics, the magicians of mutability gradually sculpt a new man who will constitute the ideal citizen of an emergent technocratic world order.
And something that we tried to emphasize back then, and we still try to emphasize to this very day, is that these magicians of mutability exist both in left and right wing camps.
Yeah,
they you can find them in both deep state institutions with a more left leaning orientation, and deep state institutions with a more right wing orientation. Either way, because most people, when they hear about the mutability of man, well, they think that this is just that these would be crazy ideas that you would find in a new age commune. But the truth is that you find these beliefs also among very, very buttoned down, suit and tie conservative types. And so it's this kind of this technocratic thought, this technocratic paradigm runs through both sides and it's almost, at some point, it almost renders right wing and left wing as irrelevant categories, as non-categories.
Right. So important to emphasize. These categories are false. Yeah.
Well, as Paul pointed out, this sort of rhetoric, these ideas, this anthropological doctrine of absolute human plasticity, you would expect that to be just a fixture of the kind of nonsensical New Age literature that you would find on the bookshelves of many liberals.
But you can read stuff that was written by Curtis Yarvin, and if you didn't associate his name with what was written, you would have thought that it was written by somebody wearing beads and sandals at Esalen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it is with Curtis Yarvin and that whole dark enlightenment group. A lot of what they say is no different. I mean, it's once you peel back the kind of right of center language and right of center kind of rhetoric and all, it's no different than what you would find at an Esalen Institute or any of the or Lucis Trust or anything like that,
or Ronald Reagan's espousal of the apocryphal tale that was promulgated by none other than Manly P. Hall. Ronald Reagan believed this apocryphal tale that Manly P. Hall wrote about. I believe it was in the Secret Destiny of America. Would that be the one? I
believe so.
Wherein it Manly P. Hall holds that this mysterious figure delivered to the founders of the United States the blueprint for the transmogrification of the United States into a world government, basically what would be eventually euphemistically dubbed the New World Order. But you've like Paul said, you can find this on both sides of the political spectrum. Most recently, the most recent exemplar of this class of magicians, these magicians of mutability, as we dub them, is none other than Dr. Fauci, who is more so a darling of the left. In an October 2020 audiobook recording of his biography, Fauci declared, and I'll omit the expletive that shows up in his verbatim quote, but he said, "It's been proven that when you make it difficult for people in their lives, they lose their ideological BS and they get vaccinated." So herein is
it's mutability. Yeah,
exactly. Wow. Herein is the sort of behavioral tyranny that our series highlighted. Fauci was promoting the application of certain stimuli, namely the deliberate complicating of daily life, to compel people to abandon their deeply cherished beliefs, which he basically castigates, assigns the pejorative of ideological BS to. Bear in mind, he adheres to ideological BS himself. What makes his ideological BS any more tenable than any other person's ideological BS? I don't know, apart from the fact that he lays claim to the status of being, an enlightened scientist. But he basically was contending that you could compel people to abandon these deeply cherished beliefs and comply with coercive vaccination programs. So yearning to be free from the negative stimuli of curfews, public segregation, discriminative employment policies, medical apartheid, economic disenfranchisement, the unvaccinated would presumably abandon their nagging questions and capitulate to forced vaccination with an experimental and potentially deleterious pharmacological agent. But underpinning Fauci's statement, again, is this anthropological assumption that man is mutable, that man is something that is pliable.
Yeah, if you're looking back with it all in the rear view, you can see the insidious nature of it, because basically what was happening was the creation of a cult, what many people call the COVIDiots or the COVIDians,
the branch COVIDians,
derisively, but the COVID cult was being created. And if you didn't wish to be initiate, well, that's fine. We have coercive measures that will eventually convince you that you need to join this new religion.
Right.
And we saw what those measures were. There were people that lost their jobs, and there were people that still have not financially recouped and got back on their feet, because they said, no, I'm not going to, and their employer said, well, the mandate says thus and so. And so,
Right.
Either do or hit the road. And so,
right, you had the transformation of the whole of society into nothing more than what could be considered a Skinner box. You're
Right.
familiar with the B.F. Skinner. He had the Skinner box, or as it was comically referred to, the hair, HEIR, hair conditioner, where you would basically place an infant, and you could introduce all the proper stimuli to encourage the desired modes of thought and behavior. Well, that's essentially what Fauci was, promoting. There was the use of these negative stimuli, such as vaccine mandates, curfews, the refusal of medical assistance to the unvaccinated, all sorts of just morally repugnant practices
to get you to join the cult. And
Yeah.
like all cults, like almost all cults, like many cults, I'll say, and we have the same steps, and we have the same phases. And what's one phase of a lot of cults? Self-immolation. And that's where we're at with it now, because there is a whole swath of the population. I mean, a tremendous amount of the world population has been vaccine injured. And, there were several people that were killed on day 0, day 1, day 2, day 3, and then there was several thousands of those. And now there's millions left that are injured. And, you can look at it as analogous to a nuclear bomb being set off. The ones that died in those first, 2-3 days, a week after taking the injection and all, they were basically at ground zero, killed almost instantly. The vaccine injured that are still with us, they're right outside of that of ground zero, and now they're the ones that die by degrees,
Right.
die gradually from starvation, from malnutrition, from extreme weather, whether it be extreme heat or extreme cold. They're analogous to that. They're still dying, just not at the accelerated rate that those ones that died almost instantly, that died suddenly, went.
Right.
And so it's experiencing now, that whole COVIDian called this experiencing self-immolation as that first group, dies off suddenly, and this other group, the millions of more start to die off gradually.
Yeah, but this anthropological doctrine of absolute human plasticity, it was disseminated throughout the years under various appellations and various forms. It was disseminated as the ideas of transformism, which was kind of this Lamarckian belief that the human organism could will itself to improve, will itself to actually transform on the essential level, on the ontological level. Well, that Lamarckian doctrine eventually transmogrified into Darwinism, and you see with Darwinism, you see what Wolfgang Smith basically classified as a Gnostic myth. He calls Darwinism a Gnostic myth because it dignifies the soteriological claim of self-salvation. That was the core soteriology of Gnosticism, was self-salvation, with the metaphysical claim of self-creation, because on Darwinism, all organisms, all life are just spontaneously generated. It emerged from the causa sui order. But you'll find that with Darwinism that it was promoted heavily by the Royal Society, and the Royal Society could be considered a Masonic organization because of the Masonic pedigree of its founders. But you'll have people more of the normie view, more of the pedestrian view of the Royal Society, is that it was little more than a collection of naive Baconians who believed in this oversimplified epistemology of empirical science devoid of intention, devoid of hypothesis, as Newton put it, hypothesis non fingo. But there was an inner circle within the Royal Society, which Adrian Desmond and James Moore characterize as, in their words, a sort of Masonic Darwinian lodge invisible to outsiders. And this inner circle was the X Club, and its members wielded a substantial amount of influence over every famous scientist at the time. All of its members, except Herbert Spencer, were secretaries or presidents of learned societies. And T.H. Huxley presided over the group. T.H. Huxley, of course, being Darwin's bulldog. And he would, through that group, manipulate the scientific press. One of the most prevalent examples of X Club media manipulation was its obfuscation of the Bathybius Haeculi scandal. It was eventually discovered that the Bathybius Haeculi, it was not, as many of the members of the X Club had claimed, it was not the missing Monera in Ernest Haeckel's filial genetic tree. It was instead gypsum. It was a lifeless rock. But the X Club suppressed almost every revelation of that debacle. And remember, the X Club was presided over by T.H. Huxley, a Freemason and a participant in the formation of the Rhodes Roundtable groups. And the Roundtable groups were devoted to the formation of a British-ruled global government. Out of the
so Darwinism is part of the empire, much like Arianism. It overlaps. It's the same thing. This is the science. It justifies our rule.
Yeah. That's absolutely right. Globalism, in the words of the late Malachi Martin, qualifies as, and this is how Malachi Martin put it, quote unquote, socio-political Darwinism. It's premised upon the belief that global governance, a one world government, is the natural corollary of man's alleged political evolution. So running concurrently with man's biological evolution, there's this process, alleged process of political evolution. And of course, the Bathybius Haeculi scandal imperiled the veracity of Darwin's claims, which in turn provided the scientific foundation for the global society that Huxley and his Masonic colleagues hoped to see enshrined. And so you see that's why you have the promulgation of Darwinism. It was the most promising vessel for this anthropological doctrine of absolute human plasticity, and that's that brings us to the topic of the semiotics of 9/11, which we discussed with Visigoth. I wrote that article, golly, so long ago. The actual topic of semiotics was brought to my attention by actually one of my instructors when I was going to college, a man by the name of Elliot Gaines. He was my instructor in media criticism, and he had familiarized me with semiotics, and he wrote this piece over the semiotics of the media images surrounding 9/11. But semiotics is basically the study of signs. In anything that communicates an idea or represents an object constitutes a sign. So signs can be visual images like pictures, physical gestures. Signs are written or spoken words. Whenever we communicate, we employ signs. Well, semiotics in and of itself, it's a morally neutral field of study. It's merely the study of human communication. But given the inherent psychocognitive power of signs and their potential for shaping thought, the field of semiotics can and has been historically weaponized by less than altruistic parties throughout history. For instance, Adam Weishaupt, founder of the infamous Bavarian Illuminati, employed a system of semiotic manipulation that he called seal espionage. Ceiling espionage basically meant spying on the soul. It involved the close observation and analysis of Illuminist adepts, the lower tier members of the Illuminati. Through hierarchical observation, Weishaupt believed that it was possible to reduce every expression, gesture, word, everything, every behavior exhibited by the Illuminist to an easily decipherable paint-by-number schematic. And Weishaupt's collaborator, von Neig, he referred to this system as, in his words, Semiotic der Seele, or a semiotics of the soul. Now, of course, if you're an astute listener, you'll identify seal espionage as a precursor to B.F. Skinner's behaviorism, which was premised upon the physicalist assumption that all observable behavior provided the only adequate indicator of mental states. If you wanted to know what a man was thinking, you observed the behavior. The behavior should tell you everything, which we now know is not the case. Man is not so easily reducible an organism. He's not. You can't so easily reduce human behavior to this paint by number schematics. But interestingly enough, Skinner authored a sci-fi novel entitled Walden 2, and that proffered the normative contention that a utopian society could be established through a ubiquitous system of behavioral modification. Skinner saw communist China as the closest approximation of his fictional society, and of course, as it turns out, the funding for Walden 2 came through one of the machinations of the MK Ultra, projects, the Human Ecology Fund. That's where the funding for his book came from. So that should tell you a little something about.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
1948, huh?
Yeah. Weishaupt's ceiling espionage and Skinner's behaviorism, they're both reminiscent of Del Sarte's method of acting, which, if you know anything about Del Sarte's method of acting, it was kind of this crude schematicism, which contended that the greatest performers could just mimic all the proper gestures to communicate emotional states, the emotional states of the characters they portray. But in the years leading up to World War II, the intelligence and military wings of the establishment were beginning to recognize semiotics' potential application as a weapon. Certain theoreticians were realizing that the field of mass communications, which was already subsumed under the technocratic social sciences, could be converted into an instrument for manipulation of target populations. Academic contractors convinced government clients that mass communications could be used to do more than just convince kids to drink their Ovaltine. Eventually, a cozy love affair between social scientists and the intelligence community formed. The Army Psychological Warfare Division employed Morris Janowitz of the University of Michigan, Murray Gurfey, Saul Pandover of the New School of Social Research, and W. Phillips Davidson of Columbia, and Rand. All of these men were assigned to the Army Psychological Warfare Division by the Office of Strategic Services, or the OSS, which of course was the forerunner to the CIA. And these social scientists used their expertise in mass communications to develop a weaponized form of semiotics, thereby fulfilling William Wild Bill Donovan's goal of creating an Americanized version of what the Nazis called Weltanschauungskrieg, which translated from German literally means worldview warfare. Modern psychological warfare is basically the resculpting of worldviews through semiotic manipulation. And the Nazis were doing it before we were. But after World War II, the OSS social scientists diffused themselves throughout the establishment, and many would work for the CIA. Some even occupied lofty positions in tax-exempt foundations, which of course are powerful tools for the power elite because they provide tax shelters for the oligarchs, and they shield the oligarchs' wealth from the income tax. but they also allow the power elite to finance certain social engineering projects for the management of society. But you see semiotics, weaponized semiotics, at work in with September 11th. Um, you'll recall during the 9/11 attacks, the attacks on the World Trade Center, Ron Insania with MSNBC. Ron Insania at one point made an intertextual reference. I'll quote him verbatim for the edification of the audience. He says, quote, "As we were going across the street, we were not terribly far from the World Trade Center building, the South Tower. As we were cutting across the quarantine zone, actually, the building began disintegrating, and we heard it and looked up and started to see elements of the building coming down, and we ran. And honestly, it was like a scene out of Independence Day. Everything began to rain down. It was pitch black around us as the wind was ripping through the corridors of Lower Manhattan," unquote. Well, my instructor, Elliot Gaines, in his article over this, he identified the Independence Day reference as being semiotically significant. It's what's known as an intertextual reference in semiotics. An intertextual reference will draw an association between a text, an existing text, and an event, or two texts. It'll draw two texts together. But because Ron Insania was, a journalist at the time, presenting before a global audience, he was thoroughly cognizant of the fact that this intertextual reference, according to Elliot Gaines, would be understood as a commonly known text. And at that point, you see the
one of my colleagues who is right in the middle of the
seeds.
collapse of those buildings is CNBC's Ron Insana.
Is that him?
Down with a cameraman
Yep.
hoping to get close to the World Trade Center.
That's it.
And then
He still
it
has
began
dust
to
on
come
his
down.
his.
Yeah.
Ron, take us
This is
through
the
what you
day.
experienced.
Well, Tom,
Yeah, he
much
looks
of the area had been, in
ridiculous.
fact, cordoned off, and the cameraman from MSNBC and I
He
were trying
cleaned
to get
himself-
across to the
he
west
cleaned
side of
himself
the
up,
World Trade Center
just
in order to
enough,
hook
but
up with
left
the rest of the
most of the
NBC
dust.
crews that we knew were there. As we were moving towards the building, we saw the top begin to blow out in a plume of smoke, and we heard the noise associated with an implosion. We turned and immediately ran for cover in the other direction as debris began to rain down. As we made our way, John going straight down the street, I taking a right turn around a corner, it got increasingly dark. The skies blackened as the material just continued to rain down.
This
I
isn't
get
the right
briefly
one. I got to
behind
find the one
car,
with Matt
and
Lauer,
as the
Corrick,
material
and
got
Brokaw.
thicker and thicker,
Let's
and it
see.
became increasingly difficult to breathe, I got inside a parked car, a random parked car.
Let's see if he mentions
and,
Independence Day here.
hid there basically until the material stopped falling. It was pitch black, black as night inside that car, and for several minutes I remained there until some flickers of light were able to be seen. I made my way to a building and joined some police officers who were inside, and as the blackness began to lift and this gray, thick smoke clung in the air, we were able to find a police car and make our way out of the area. The policeman stopping along the way to pick up two injured people and leave them at a Midtown hospital, and subsequently made my way here.
What about collateral damage to other buildings in the area? Those, of course, are the classic canyons of Lower Manhattan, and as that building came down, it did create a kind of tornadic wind that went through there.
Absolutely, much like the images that were created for the movie Independence
There you go.
Day, when
There
New
it
York
is.
Of
There you
Lower
go.
Manhattan, and as that
So he
building
said
came
it
down,
twice. I don't think this is the
Yes.
interview you referenced. So is he saying it again to
Right.
Brokaw? He's planting that
Right, yeah,
semiotic
making sure-
connection.
Yeah,
he's
did
making sure to push it home.
yeah, to
push-
reinforce the intertextual
Yes.
reference.
and
Yes.
just to avoid any confusion on the part of the listeners, Elliot Gaines, his article became a foundational piece for Philip's article of the semiotic deception. That's when Phil says Elliot Gaines' article, that he's referring to the article that's cited in his own.
that I'm
Right.
citing.
So people, right? You've cited it in your article, which I can put the link to it. It's still there. If people want to read it, it's the Semiotic Deception of September 11th, and I will put a link in the show notes.
Yeah.
Try to
And-
put it in the chat right now.
And if you can find a copy, I would encourage everybody to read a copy of Professor Gaines's article too over this. Too, the man was quite brilliant. You know, I don't know if he's still even teaching.
I haven't heard from him for a while, but
it was at Wright State University,
Right.
and that was years ago.
But I'll give you the money quote from his article. I think I still have a copy of the Journal of Semiotics that he published it in. But here's the money quote. This is why the intertextual reference to Independence Day is so important. He says, and I quote, "The violence in Independence Day, coded as fiction, constructs a narrative binary opposition that clearly identifies good against evil. The available images representing the events of September 11th, using inferences drawn from Independence Day's sign-object relations, construct a narrative paradigm based upon the same themes but coded as reality," unquote. And so we have the binary opposition, this Manichaean binary opposition. If you recall, this is always a hallmark of Manichaeanism, which always promotes always promotes an ontology that follows from the assumption that good and evil are equipotent, and they also that evil possesses a positive ontological status. It establishes a paradigm of good and evil, a binary opposition of good and evil. Now, why is that significant? Well, following Insania's intertextual reference to Independence Day and the establishing of this oppositional this dialectical relation between good and evil, you have Katie Couric reading an upsetting wire, and this time as a voice-over narrative to video footage of Palestinian demonstrators. The footage is accompanied by a title card claiming that the event occurred earlier this morning. Okay, you have the juxtaposition of this image with Insania's intertextual reference, and with this juxtaposition, you have the establishment of good Americans against evil Arabs, against evil Palestinians. So within the mind of the percipient, you have these causal connections already being made. So now we're being...
It was supposedly Palestinians that were cheering on the terror attacks earlier that morning, and it ended up that had not transpired earlier.
Right, yeah. NBC had to acknowledge the fact that they committed a breach of ethics by using archived footage with an
surprise, yeah,
with an unverified wire, but it was too late. It was too late. Now you have established the Manichaean binary of good Americans against evil Arabs, and that
had to do this. They had to do this because the establishment of this Manichaean binary, it had actually preceded 9/11 with something we talked about before in prior interviews. National Security Council Memo 68, NSC 68. It create that memo, which was written by Paul Nitze and other hawkish elements during the Truman presidency. That had established this kind of Manichaean binary between the good United States and the evil empire of the Soviet Union, which allowed for the trend of militarism and the trend of statism. Well, when the Soviet Union was gone, how did you continue that militarist and that statist trend that was so advantageous to the elites? You had to come up with a new Manichaean binary that would continue, that would preserve that trend. and so that's why they did things like this with during the attacks, the terror attacks, so that a new Manichaean binary would be established.
Yeah, and in the book preceded. Oh, go ahead. Well,
It's an incredible statement that this guy's repeating right on that same day. It's the same thing. Listen to it again.
Create a kind of tornadic wind that went through there.
Absolutely. Much like the images that were created for the movie Independence Day, when New York was exploding, the corridors of Lower Manhattan are so narrow and channeled.
So it's just like Independence. New York just exploded. Independence Day was filmed 1996. Director Roland Emmerich. Look at his films. Wow.
Yeah.
Like they're all new World Order films. Yeah. That's a whole nother show. Like you can take apart Roland Emmerich. Like, whoa.
It was based on a Heinlein novel, and Robert Heinlein was a part of the OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis. I believe he was the Agape Lodge in California. And
if you find that confirmation, send it to me because I've looked for it. I know he was around those guys.
Well, I know that he was really close. I mean, based on the book Sex and Rockets that was about Jack Parsons, I know he was either part or he was extremely close to them.
Adjacent for sure. Yeah, he was in the same kind of writers group as Hubbard and Ford. Was the guy Ford or was the publisher? I forgot his name. Something with an F.
Well, with Heinlein, you had the 1997 adaptation of his book Starship Troopers, and within in Starship Troopers, you still had the Manichaean binary opposition of beleaguered homeworld, the good Earthlings versus the evil aliens, and within the ontological galaxy of Starship Troopers, you have the reinforcement of the sovereign state's reliance upon the creation of an external threat in order for foreign policy to be formulated. That external threat must exist. And then, lo and behold, you have the publication of Zbigniew Brzezinski, former national security advisor to Carter, his book, The Grand Chessboard. In that book, The Grand Chessboard, which is basically Brzezinski's strategy for America achieving global hegemony.
Another Illuminati reference, by the way. The chessboard is a huge Illuminati reference. Symbol.
Well, in that book, he says that the catalyst for imperial mobilization, because he recognizes that there's this natalist aversion towards imperialism. He says, in order to overcome that, he says, and I quote, "Moreover, as America becomes an increasingly multicultural society, it may find more difficult to fashion a consensus on foreign policy issues, except in the circumstance of a truly massive and widely perceived direct external threat," unquote. So you've had the seeding now for the creation of this direct external threat, and now you have America's armies, suddenly abroad in Afghanistan, then in Iraq, seeking out non-existent weapons of mass destruction. All thanks to the weaponized Semiotics campaign that was imposed upon the collective American mind and the creation of this Manichaean binary opposition.
Right, it's incredible. Let's listen to the rest of Insan and see what else he says.
It did create a kind of tornadic wind that went through there.
Absolutely. Much like the images that were created for the movie Independence Day, when New York was exploding, the corridors of Lower Manhattan are so narrow and channel so much wind, even just on a plain windy day, that this material blew through in a way that was really unimaginable. It was truly frightening. It continued to rain down for several minutes, as you can see there, and the winds just whipped through these corridors for several minutes, eventually calming down to such an extent where there was just a thick gray haze throughout the entire area, Tom.
All right, thanks very much, CNBC's Ron.
Yep.
So he's got his bullet points, man. He just stated them right there, 9/11. Just like the Harley guy. I said, come down in a pancake or whatever, that guy with the hat.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That that brings brings us back to the original theme of the Magicians of Mutability series that we did with Visigoth. You the that was basically the elite or factions of the elite. In this particular case, the faction of the power elite that most benefited from the 9/11 attacks was the neoconservatives, who just advanced a form of global government. They wouldn't call it that, but they advanced a form of global government as a unilaterally initiated coalition of states, which it stands in opposition to the multilateral coalition that your standard globalists would have advocated for. But the anthropological assumption was that humanity could be shaped, could be formed, that the through the behavioral techniques that they have formulated over the years, that man could essentially be changed. And you saw a changing of the global terrain, the global geopolitical terrain at the time, because the objective was to transform the United States into an imperial power, not unlike that of Great Britain circa the Victorian age, with the promulgation of Darwinism and all the other and Malthusianism and the opium wars in China.
Right, which really happened. Another one I would add to Independence Day and the Highline film is one from 2001, which was Pearl Harbor, which is another enemy film replete with CIA people. I think it came out before September 11th. I think it was June, so the timing is just incredibly perfect for it to have this alien, entity and this huge $100 million production or something like that. Really incredible.
Yeah. And now you see it, you even see it now, the promulgation of this Manichaean binary now because
sorry, one more thing. One of the interesting things about Pearl Harbor, 2001, the date of the release is May 21st, and directed by Michael Bay, who's now been brought up in the Epstein files today, specifically named.
Yeah.
So it all kind of overlaps and intertwines, guys. Very dark stuff.
He also had a considerable amount of Pentagon support when he was filming Transformers. Yeah, because he was willing to portray the United States Armed Services so positively. Transformers kind of acts as kind of something like a recruitment propaganda for the United States Armed Services, and so of course he could afford all the Black Hawk helicopters and aircraft carriers, and even blow a few of them up with the blessing of the Pentagon.
Right. Let's watch how similar this is, the events of 9/11 to the film. Watch this. Time's up. The visuals are almost the same. It's weird. The canyons, right? Just like he said, just like Insana said, papers everywhere. This is 1996. That's the New York Empire State Building.
You got to admit, in a certain respect, it's a kind of sophisticated Hollywood spectacle, but it does on an emotional level, like it creates the effect. If it has the effect that the desired effect. Even this
no question of fear. Why do the aliens fixated on buildings? That's one of the questions. Like, why do they have to blow up a building? Why don't they just shoot it? Shoot hit the center of Central Park. Like, who cares? No, we have to show the building being blown up. Wow.
Right.
Stuff.
Well, I mean, like anything that would be like an attestation to man's ingenuity and his ability to do great things. It being destroyed by this force that just dwarfs him completely. I mean, overshadows him completely.
Ontologically and epistemologically, he's completely overwhelmed, and so it induces a state of veritable ontological shock, where questions of
which is a term now being used by the OSAP/ATIP group ad nauseum. You've heard Lou Elizondo say it. You've heard David Grush say it. That term is thrown around in the movie The Age of Disclosure that was released late last year. It's in that movie several times. So yeah, and it's what's old is new again, I guess. So,
right.
Because now they're shooting for ontological shock. Not just with the GWAT and with the global war against these evil Arab terrorists. They're now shooting for it with an actual alien.
Yeah,
menace.
instead of making an indirect conflation between Arabs and aliens, now we'll just settle for aliens. However, by whatever means they can fake that sort of invasion. Which
one of the other semiotic signposts that you reference, which I will reference, is the building destruction at the end of Fight Club in 1999. Very strange, because that's not how the book ends, by the way.
No, there's
two strange triangular buildings, look like the Twin Towers, but these buildings are important. You mentioned even in your article and in your discussion with Visigoth, the obelisk is 2001, which is another semiotic signpost. And if you're looking at this show will be banned off YouTube. I'm surprised they haven't shut down yet. But if you're looking at this on YouTube or X or Rumble, you will see the Millennium Tower on the bottom left-hand side of this thing next to Independence Day. And what is it? It's a huge monolith. And you can imagine being in that hotel watching the events of September 11th, because people were there. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah,
that's a huge monolith.
And 2001 is essentially that transformationist anthropological assumption concerning man again, because the whole if I'm not mistaken, it was Stanley Kubrick said that he was making one of the most expensive religious films ever,
right?
And a lot of people ask the question, well, how is 2001 a religious film? Well, it countenances this doctrine of absolute anthropological plasticity. You see humanity actually changing on the essential level in the film, moving from ape, from this simian progenitor to man, and then from man to this
star child.
Star child. And from there, later in the series, to actual machines, to machines, the transhumanist eschaton, and this is a parody of the Christian doctrine of theosis, wherein man participates in the divine energies of God, and in so participating, becomes holy like God. This parodies that. This is man becoming God. This is apotheosis.
Yeah, but it's a crucial there's a crucial difference there, a very crucial difference, which has to be pointed out, because there's a lot of New Agers that are like, we don't see what the problem is. We don't. Why do you Christians get such heartburn when we suggest this? Don't your own writers suggest this? Well, when people like St. Augustine talked about divinization, or other church fathers talked about theosis, man never changes. Essentially, his essence remains.
Yeah.
His essence is he still has human essence.
Yeah, there remains ontological distinctions between God and man in theosis. It's man being conformed to the image of the risen Christ. Okay, the who provided the schematic for man's glorification on Mount Tabor. Humanity never supplants God. With what is being suggested at the end of 2001 and in New Age literature is apotheosis, the actual assumption of ontological parity with God, becoming God instead of becoming a mirror, an image bearer.
That's what Arthur C. Clarke talks about all the time in his science fiction.
That's
And
right.
that's an interesting question that
Right.
Biz asked you 20 years ago. Is science fiction fiction? What's the answer?
Well, and if you read, and I think I quoted the article in our early interviews with Viz. You read the article "Normative Fiction" by Martha A. Barter. She basically shows how science fiction, actually will make subtle propositions, convey subtle propositions through plot, through characters, through all of the narrative devices of fiction, to bring about a change in the status quo, small but nevertheless significant changes in the status quo, and induce what could be called Gedanken experiments or thought experiments. And it was I think it was Campbell. He wrote "Who Goes There," which eventually became the science fiction film "The Thing from Another World," and then was later on
Is
later
that
on
Joseph Campbell? Joseph
Yes,
Campbell?
Joseph Campbell.
Oh,
Thank you. Yes, Joseph Campbell said science fiction provides excellent opportunities for
Wow.
sociocultural Gedanken experiments or sociocultural
Wow, I didn't know
thought.
that. Man with a Thousand Faces, Hero with a Thousand
Yeah.
Faces. That's, I think, his most
Hero.
famous book. Yeah.
It's not Joseph Campbell who wrote the Power of Myth and the.
Well, he. Oh boy, I'm getting my Campbells mixed up.
Okay.
Campbell
Is it-
who wrote "Who Goes There," which eventually became the thing.
Let me find out if you can find his name. Campbell. Who
John
goes there?
W. Campbell. Yeah, John W. Campbell.
John W.
we
Campbell.
were-
Different name. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, John W. Campbell. And John W. Campbell also referred to science fiction as prophecy. He uses the word prophecy. Now, he doesn't use it in the same sense that, the theologian might invoke the term to, denote the actual predicting of accurate events in the future. Instead, he means it to say that it conditions the readers or conditions audiences to actually tangibly enact the future, the vision of the future that is presented to them in a piece of literature or in a film, and you actually see where those who have been inspired by science fiction or writing science fiction actually actively engage in transforming society, making transformations of the actual transformation of history itself. For instance, Leo Szilard, who ran the Manhattan Project, was deeply inspired by H.G. Wells' World Set Afire. What
World Set Free?
World Set Free. Yes, the World Set Free. And how he compartmentalized the Manhattan Project mirrored the very same way that H.G. Wells proposed that such a project to create an atom bomb. And by the way, the term atom bomb, that was a neologism presented by none other than H.G. Wells. He coined the term. But the system of compartmentalization, whereby absolute secrecy concerning the project could be maintained, that system, that pattern was presented by H.G. Wells in his book, The World Set Free. And Leo Szilard, this Hungarian this Hungarian physicist actually tangibly enacted that which he had read in Wells's book. So is it just fiction? Is it just entertainment? Well, I think that history can attest to the fact that it's a little more.
We also know that President Truman, one of the reasons that he sanctioned the new the creation and the use of the nuclear bombs is because he had grown up reading a whole slew of science fiction stories that presented a super weapon, that would bring about world peace. And so, that's why when, he would be presented with this idea of a super weapon, in the form of a nuclear bomb, and that it would resonate with him. And, he would, hey, yes, he would, he would fully commission the creation of such a horrendous weapon, because he had grown up believing that a super weapon was the precursor to perpetual peace, and
it could be used as the proverbial rod of correction against recalcitrant nations, and basically forced them into compliance with Pax Americana.
It became kind of a salvific device for him.
Yeah.
It ensured the salvation of mankind coherently, so, because it's like, well, this is the big stick that will knock you over the head with if you don't get along, if we don't have a cessation of hostilities.
Yeah, even in an interview with Kinokaze, the online magazine Kinokaze, Richard Stanley, who directed Dust Devil and Hardware, yeah, and also recently The Caller Out of Space. Richard Stanley refers to the atom bomb as a Gnostic messiah. And Richard Stanley is quite steeped in occultism. In fact, his film Dust Devil is nothing but vintage Gnosticism, absolute vintage Gnosticism.
Wow. That was the guy who did the one about Island of Dr. Moreau that they made that.
He was
documentary.
Yeah, he was involved. He was involved with it, but eventually he lost control of the project. It was turned over to Al Frankenheimer, who was driven into an early grave by Val Kilmer and
I think Stanley went insane and went into some mountain up in the Andorras or something like that.
That is correct. Yeah, and you see him wandering around looking like a kind of cheap Gandalf knockoff with this staff walking.
No, that's an incredible documentary about how a film can go wrong. Like, wow.
Oh, yeah, and everything went wrong with that. Everything.
Maybe it's tangential, but it's a little bit interesting and highly suspect. Richard Stanley has said that he used to see the disgraced producer, that Weinstein, Harvey Weinstein, at these parties, and that he knew something was wrong with him. He knew that he was that way. The
question is if you knew that there was something wrong with Harvey Weinstein, why didn't you say something to begin with? What did you know and when did you know it? Those are the two.
But he makes it sound like
questions.
He always knew from the word go that this guy was a scoundrel, and it's like, well, I'm sure that if there was a time that if Weinstein was attached to your project and said that he would finance your film, you wouldn't have said no, and I doubt that Richard Stanley would have said no to that kind of pocketbook. So,
right. I mean, I think that people just went along to get along.
Yeah,
Very few people resisted him. And I think that was part of his intimidation and power was.
And I'm fairly
I'm going to do this in front of your face.
Yeah. And I'm fairly certain that Richard Stanley would fall in that category too. He would have been just as sycophantic and kowtowing to the man as everybody else.
Wow. Yeah, it's just really incredible stuff. like, and all the signaling, all the semiotics, all these people involved in this thing. I mean, the what else we got here, guys? Do we have anything else we want to cover? You want to cover some of the questions? I got a lot of questions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
How do you guys think the towers came down from average welder minding my own? Is any thoughts on that? The follow up is: are they familiar with Judy Wood's work and are there options on it? So that's a double question.
Dr. Judy Wood.
I'm not familiar with Dr. Judy Wood. That's one place where we diverged with Visigoth. You know, I don't think that if charges were planted in those buildings, that they would have survived the impact of a plane. And I also think that there would have been a lot of reverse architectural work that would have had to gone into that, and that wouldn't go unnoticed in the days prior to the attacks.
Yeah.
And so I think that we think it's possible that the talk about charges in the buildings and the like might be white noise, might be disinformation to get people to basically muddy the waters so that nobody would be able to, really investigate. Just get,
I think you can make a better case for there having been foreknowledge of the attacks being permitted to happen, and then the attacks being used to facilitate imperial mobilization. It's much like viewing a copy of the Zapruder film. How much discussion of, were there multiple shooters? Is the driver shooting him? This kind of really confuses the greater question is, were there parties that wanted this man dead, that wanted JFK dead? And if so, why? And, why did it happen? But yeah, I mean, I think you can really make the better cases to be made for foreknowledge and the sort of seeding of cultural artifacts with these ideas. The idea that it was not difficult to mobilize America against Arab powers when you have this intertextual reference to Independence Day and the binary opposition of good and evil then being conflated with the Arab people, which you see Palestinian demonstrators in archived footage along with an unverified wire,
and also with the Zapruder film, Lee Harvey Oswald does not appear in the Zapruder film. We can't see where the shot is, who's pulling the trigger. We can't. So it is possible that Lee Harvey Oswald was a patsy, and we certainly believe that he was. The problem with the films that we have of the September 11th attacks is that we have the planes crashing into the buildings. We have them crashing into the Twin Towers. We can clearly see that. And so, it kind of renders the question of charges kind of like moot. You can see that a plane smashes into there and so we don't want to get going down like false trails, research trails here. That it could be, it's quite possible that those kind of stories were put out there to distract from the stronger evidence, and that's what disinformation is supposed to do, is get you headed down a bad trail and everything. So
right. Another question is, free dumb mind, what is the symbolism of the number 11? I've done so many shows on that. You can just look in my archive. I've done a book on it. I've done extensive research. Maybe you haven't been exposed to that. Look at my book, Prophet of Evil. Is there a mass cognitive dissonance indented to be generated 9/11 vis-a-vis the opening of borders to mass migrations? I don't know, but Open borders has been a disaster. It's a catastrophe. Trillions
It
of
has
dollars is
been.
missing. So trillions of dollars is missing, guys. Like, I think maybe the entire national debt is stolen. Like, literally trillions of dollars has been offshored with no oversight. With, I think, the involvement of a lot of leaders.
I think that right now with Minnesota, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, no
I mean,
question. California is a disaster.
people are
California is a
aghast.
disaster.
People are aghast over Minnesota, and I guess justifiably so. And maybe it just might lead to Tim Walz's resignation. It should most certainly lead to him being charged.
He should be arrested. Yeah, it should already have been arrested. There's enough evidence to already arrest him. Yeah.
But like you said, what about the tremendous amount of fraud in California, in New York? You know,
it's in the hundreds of billions here. It's in the hundreds of billions. People are not, they can't comprehend it because they're dumb and they watch TV. If you're still watching TV, I mean, it's weaponized against you. There's no question. But yeah, no, the fraud's off the chart. And then this Mondami guy's in, which is a time we could talking about the warmth of collectivism, which if you know anything about collectivism, it doesn't warm at all. If you don't go along with it, you get shot. He killed 100 million people in the last 100 years. You must not know history. He's going to try working. You can only at this point can you think that they intentionally want to take money from people and kill people. There's no question because that's all they've done in the past. These kind of radical leftists. It's such a joke. So if you live in New York, I'd get a gun. Like, I mean, you have your own rights, Second Amendment rights. I get a gun anywhere if you live anywhere these days.
If you live in New York, I'd move.
Right. Yeah, escape from New York. Literally, Snake Plissken your way out of there. Yeah. When it's the Statue of Liberty going to be? It's an interesting comment, Amanda Simmons, when you say this, because Roland Emmerich in this noted thing, we have Independence Day in all his films, he always takes down these big symbols. So like Christ in Brazil falls over at these end catastrophes.
And interesting, there's an article with direct quotes from Roland Emmerich concerning the images in, what was that film, 2000? What was?
Yeah, no, there was one where it's like a huge, like
2012. Was that 2012?
Cataclysm?
Yeah, something like that. With John Cusack.
Yeah, somebody just put it up. Planet of the Apes. That's what I was going for. It preceded even these more recent films. It goes back even further.
The interesting thing about that Roland Emmerich film, I think it's 2012. God, it's an awful film, but it's supposed to be based on the Mayan calendar and the supposed eschatology surrounding that. But he points out that he deliberately, and he says this in an interview, and I'll have to go and look up the interview again. He says that he deliberately includes the destruction of Christian icons in Christian iconography in those scenes because of his absolute aversion towards Christianity, and also kind of a way of his way of saying that the old religions will be demolished.
They did something similar in that first Wonder Woman movie because there's supposedly a gunnery nest hiding up in the church. And so all the men lean over, and Wonder Woman on the backs of these men uses them as a ramp to jump up there, destroys the steeple with the cross on it completely, and she's standing there. So what's the message? This doesn't take a whole lot to figure that out.
Yeah, the enthronement of a goddess.
Yeah, the enthronement of a goddess, feminization of humanity.
Prophet Google asks, when do you guys think the governments will actually roll out the fake space aliens? Are we talking 5 years or like 50? What do you think?
I think it would be less than 50 in the next 5. But I'm okay. And again, that's just my forecast. My forecast could be way off. It's just that they're beating the drum feverishly now. With OSAP, ATIP, that whole fraternity there, and they're appearing before congressional panels like they never have before, ever in the past. It would usually be 10, 30 some years, between times that, that Congress would ever address these issues, and here they're appearing all the time like crazy, mostly thanks to people like Tom Burchett and Anna Polina Luna and a few others. They're really beating the drum, which suggests that it's coming up soon. But I got to throw this in here, if I'm correct, and it does happen soon. This fake space invasion, it's going to fail utterly. No one is going to believe it. There might be some initial kind of the initial shock. There might be some people falling for it, but as that fades, people will start to ask questions, and there will be aspects of this operation. There'll be aspects of this psyop that are flawed. The propulsion systems used on whatever they use, whether it's drones or something else, the propulsion systems, the weapons deployed, are all going to smack of terrestrial technology. They can't help but do so. And so, the more discerning parts of the population will start asking questions. And so the narrative will fall apart almost instantaneously. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I mean, under rational kind of analysis, a lot of these claims of the UFO people fall apart. It's just like with disclosure. Well, where's all the evidence? It's just somebody saw something. I said that. Well, where's like picture of one, legit one, or just something which is totally vague.
We talked about when we approached the first Deception Through Disclosure article with you, the David Grush enigma, that one. Every time Grush is asked to provide some kind of evidence, he wants to go to a skiff. He wanted to. We'll discuss that in the skiff. Which
why would you do that? If you had the evidence, you would become a world historical figure. I literally have a weapon from an alien. I literally have an alien head. I have an alien with me. You would just change human history. It would be the desire. You'd make millions and trillions of dollars. You'd become an instant fame, whatever you wanted, fame, money. You would provide by providing proof.
I think that a skiff is I think it means like secret, compartmentalized, secret compartmented,
sensitive compartmental,
sensitive compartmented information facility, and all. So why would you move it there, away from the public eye, the very people that you're supposedly trying to
disclose it?
It doesn't stand up to scrutiny. These guys' statements, nothing. Joe Rogan promoted the age of disclosure. That lets you know what kind of truth teller he is. Like he's up there. This is the greatest movie I ever saw. He's in on it. Come on.
We finished a few weeks ago part 5 of Deception Through Disclosure, and it's going to be appearing at Matt Ehret's site and at his Canadian Patriot Review site and at the Decoding Culture Foundation site. We just don't know when. It's already been submitted to them, and we look at the OSAP ATIP fraternity in that, and we end with that article, basically like saying that in the next installment we're going to be looking at the age of disclosure.
What is the OSAP ASAP thing? I don't even know what that stands for. Is that an acronym?
Okay. Those are acronyms. Those are acronyms. So OSAP is the I'm trying to remember the exact Advanced Aerospace Weapon Systems Applications Program. It's a mouthful. ATIP is the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Okay, OSAP/ATIP, the OSAP/ATIP fraternity is revealed in a 2024 Aero report, which Aero, it's there's another acronym for you. Aero is All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. Okay, it was created, I believe, by the DoD to look into UAP phenomenon. Okay, the 2024 Arrow report said that all of the modern myths of reversed engineered technologies and UAPs of a extraterrestrial origin, all of those myths emanate from the OSAP/ATIP fraternity. And what the Arrow report points out is, and this is going to be in the article, so please go and read the article. What it points out is that OSAP was officially commissioned by the Defense Intelligence Agency. Okay, so it was official. It was an official DoD project. Upon its cancellation, there were members of OSAP that continued their work under ATIP, with guys like Lou Elizondo, Jay Stratton, I think, might have been involved, et cetera, et cetera. But what they were was basically in the articles, in the report's words, was like a quote unquote UAP community of interest within the DoD. And it doesn't get much more. How do you spell deep state? You know what I mean? That's what, that's what it's based. What you're basically talking about is a deep state element within the Defense Department. That's what this UAP community of interest is. They're the ones within the Defense Department that are basically spreading all these, extraterrestrial UAP stories and basically building up the threat narrative for, the UAP threat narrative.
Gotcha. It feels like they're rebranding it with new acronyms all the time. Like every 2 or 3 years, they've got to do some kind of rebrand, get new followers.
But we quote heavily from that. Yeah, we quote heavily from that Arrow 2024 report in the article. So please go and read the article when it comes out, because the dude that wrote that was one of the primary authors on that article, Sean Kirkpatrick, who was head of Arrow for a time, when he came out with his findings, he said that Russian and Chinese spies and espionage were nothing compared to the kind of attacks, the kind of threats that he saw, threats against him, threats against his family. It's kind of spooky. It's been compared, like I know in the New York Post, they said that was almost like cult-like, the kind of persecution that he faced. So,
yeah, surprise. Guys, we are at the 90-minute mark. Is there anything you'd like to add or anything I missed before we wrap it up? And where can people find your work, your books, your articles, what you're working on? I think you mentioned the Canadian Patriot, EHRET, EHRET. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. And also anybody who would like to check out our articles, we also have articles up at the Decoding Culture Foundation, which is ran by Brett and Thomas from PsyOps Cinema as well. You can get our books, Invoking the Beyond and The Ascendancy of the Scientific Dictatorship. The Ascendancy of the Scientific Dictatorship. You want the 2006 Book Search edition. That's the expanded, revised edition. It's updated and a bit more informationally dense than the 2003 edition, but you can get those through Amazon and most online book retailers. And you can also read some of our articles in the Cultural Engineering Studies magazine, which is also put out by Brett and Thomas with PsyOps Cinema and the Coding Culture Foundation.
Yeah, and like I said, Chapter 5 of Deception Through Disclosure is coming out very soon. It's already been submitted. It's already been edited by Brett, and we just don't have the pub date. So please just keep going to Decoding Culture Foundation.
Also, keep going to Canadian Patriot Review, and checking up there for it. It should be up sometime.
And if
here
you
soon.
also, if you check out the Canadian Patriot Review, their YouTube page or the Rising Tide Foundation page, you'll see some of the lectures that we've given. We've given lectures over we've given lectures over the ufological deceptions. I've given lectures over the Gnostic elements of modern ufology. I even gave a lecture over the theocratic roots of COVIDian tyranny and the emergence of an American sociocracy with as its centerpiece Fauci as the head high priest. You can check out our lectures at either one of those YouTube channels.
Yeah, go check it out, guys. And if people want to reach out to you, where's the best place? Is it through the Decoding Culture Foundation or your social media? You guys are on X, right?
Yeah, I'm on X. You can find me just Philip D. Collins. Just put in a search for me on X. And also we have an email address. We're the Collins Bros, TheCollinsBros, the Collins Bros at yahoo.com. Feel free to get in touch with us either through X or through Yahoo or through Brett and Thomas with the Decoding Culture Foundation.
Great. And thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Thanks for everybody for listening. Had 150 live listeners. And again, there is I think a 10-part series that they did with Viz, which I'm going to repost after I post this one. And the title of this one that we did is The Magicians of Mutability, the Semiotic Deception of September 11th. But this one will be dated 2025. The other ones were from 20 years ago. They're still relevant, still meaningful. A lot of great information there. A lot of stuff we didn't even cover tonight.
It doesn't feel like it's been 20 years.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it.
It's amazing.
No.
It's amazing. You guys have done such great research, too, for decades. So people, do yourself a favor. Check out their stuff. Check out Decoding Culture and their articles and the disclosure articles that we've done. Deception by Disclosure. And there's a lot, like I mentioned at the intro, there's a lot of other episodes that we've done in the past. So you can check those out. You can go to anything like Podcast Addict, Spotify, find my William Ramsey Investigates and just type in their last names, Collins. You'll see them all. And share the show too. Like you don't have, somebody was asking me about a super chat. The best thing you could really do is just share the shows on your social media. It doesn't cost you anything. And then people who are interested like you are can find meaningful, relevant information that's a lot different than this propaganda we're being force-fed all the time by our own government. So please share the shows, and thanks a lot for listening. I really appreciate it. All right.